On this episode of Sega Talk, we talk about Dynamite Ducks. Heard of it? Neither have I. How does it tie in with Sonic the Fighters? We'll tell you. And we'll also look at a hidden dirty ending for the game. All this and more on Sega Talk.
SegaBits presents Sega Talk, a podcast talking all things Sega! With your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. Say what?
Hello and welcome to Sega Talk. I'm your host, George, and with me, like always, is Ben. Or, no, you're Pin, I'm Ben, so you be the
Pin.
sidekick right for this episode.
Right, yeah, and it has been like always. We've never had like a solo Sega Talk. How sad would that be?
Right, just us, me going like, what do you think about that, Barry? Then I look at this, I'm like waiting, I'm like, oh no, it's just me alone.
Yeah,
oh,
so you're just like, well, I guess my personal opinion, if I'm going to ask the question to myself, God, thank God for that, right?
Yeah. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about a game that maybe a lot of our audience have never heard of. It's called Dynamite Ducks, a cute mascot kind of game, but it's a beat 'em up. So I would say a cute 'em up, beat 'em up, I guess, in a way.
Sweet 'em up.
Sweet 'em up. Maybe that could be a new term. And this one's actually developed by the legendary Sega AM2 for arcades in 1988. Before we get into the episode, though, this episode was actually brought to us by Alex Hugh. Is that how you would say his last name?
Sure.
And if you want your memories read below, you can check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/SegaBits. But do you want to read his memories? They're here in the front. So if you pick an episode, you get your memories read first before we talk about our memories about the game.
That's right. Well, here we go. This is what Alex had to say. He said, I remember discovering this gem in high school after learning about how Bean the Dynamite from Sonic was based off the characters from it, and then emulating the Master System version on my school MacBook, which didn't support MAME. A little later, I downloaded the arcade version ROM to my old laptop, and playing it with a friend at college and beating it, I actually revisited the game just recently, and even did several doodles of Bean on some empty film insert boxes at work. I really hope this game gets a proper release to home consoles, which I don't see why Sega never released it as part of the Sega Ages line or in any collections, sadly. Yeah, it's not on the Mini, is it? The Astro City.
No, it's not. And it would have been a perfect game. Like, why do we have
Yeah.
Alex Kidd in there, right? Like, this game would have been pretty slick to be on there, especially since it's like pretty much a hidden gem. And I think it would have made more sense than Arabian Nights.
That's true. Yeah, and I will say I'm actually surprised this is a Patreon pick just because it's obscure, and also I'll be honest, when you told me, hey, we're doing Dynamite Ducks, I was like, oh, you're picking an easy one because you also have a review to write for Monkey Balls. You're like,
yeah.
That's what I thought you were honestly doing.
Yeah. No.
I wouldn't blame you. I'd be like, I'm doing Snail Maze if I'm like reviewing 2 games in a month.
No, this was a pick. He picked it. I actually, we get into our memories right now, but basically, I never heard of this game. I never played it. I understand, I think a lot of people are like Alex, who, heard about it from Sonic the Fighters and the Bean tie-in, which we'll get into, and it's a big part of this episode. But, I only heard of it. I seen it on list, and I always thought it was some sort of playing game or something. I was like Dynamite. It's with the weird U.
Oh yeah, the umlaut.
But then now if you really look at it, it makes sense. It's Dynamite Ducks, like ducks,
right.
So
right.
Back then I always skipped it. And it was one, and in those 80s, it was they had these hits. They had 3 games a year or something like that, or some crazy amount. And there was always these few games you never really played from Sega AM2, even Arabian Nights is another one, and Burning Rivals. So this was one that I skipped, and I finally got back to playing it for this episode, and I'm surprised. So, okay, first of all, this game is sold by the graphics, the world, the music, the effects, the idea behind it, the fact that it's a beat 'em up but with mascot characters like Donald Duck or whatever. So all that it's done perfectly. The enemies are pretty interesting with dogs and pigs and all these things you go through. It's a short game, but it's a little janky. The little fighting, and I think a lot of it is more sold by the atmosphere that the game offers. But it's not a terrible game. It's actually a pretty good game. And what do you think about it?
Well, this is definitely one of those games that most people have only seen screenshots of in reference to the Sonic connection. I a lot like Girls Garden will always be known as, it's that first game from Yuji Naka, not for the game itself. So it's one of those games, I think, that a lot of people, a lot of Sega fans might think they have opinions on, but they've never actually played, which I think is a lot of Sega games, actually. Like I've long said, people go, I wish Sega made more games. I'm like, have you checked out the back catalog? Because there is no joke, like 30 or 40 years worth of games you probably have never played. And this is one of them. This is a very obscure game. You're not going to play it unless you emulate it or you check out the Master System version, which is scaled down, and we'll get to that. But from what I've played, it's fine. It's fun. It's more like, it's not like a Sonic game at all. It's more like you said, like I'm going to say a sweet 'em up. Just like a cutesy beat 'em up with a lot of the violence hidden by cartoonish sort of antics. So yeah, if anything, it's more like if you mashed up a Looney Tunes cartoon with Streets of Rage.
Yeah.
It's weird.
So let's get into the episode. Usually with these types of games, we like have a quotes development, but it seems to me like Dynamite Ducks isn't kind of not known for that, and all the big shots that get interviewed from Sega AM2 never talk about this game, or no one ever asks them questions about this game. I feel like it's just because it's so obscure that a lot of these developers are like, I got Yu Suzuki down. All right, let's talk about the games he developed with his own hands, So,
right.
But we'll talk about the game. The game was developed on the Sega System 16B board. This is the board that actually powered Altered Beast and Golden Axe, so it makes sense that a beat 'em up game would be on it from Sega AM2. Well, the Sega 16 board is actually quite popular, used by a lot of Sega's teams. This is actually the only Sega AM2 game on the Sega 16 board that they used. I think it's because at this point in 1988, they were going to transition to the System 32 board. And Sega AM2 was actually known for making custom boards for their games, for like Outrun and Afterburner. And they called it the Super Scaler series of arcade boards. So this is the first game that they made on a board that every other system made or used. So, let me see. The gallery. I was just looking at my recording. So, looking at the credits for the game, it's easy to see that this game is actually kind of low budget. But then actually, now that I went and saw Afterburner's credits, who only has 3 people working on it, with Yu Suzuki doing the programming, directing, and everything, this game actually seems kind of big, actually. It has 9 people involved in it. But at the time I made the notes, I thought it was pretty small. So that's an opposite, because I guess Yu Suzuki's just a brilliant man that could do everything on a team by himself. So it's like a one-man army.
Right.
Yeah. One of them, Yu Suzuki on this game, is billed as a producer. We'll talk about what we think about his involvement in this game in a little bit. But the main game was programmed by Satsushi Mifune, who goes by Bin _ Chan _ San. And which is quite funny because one of the 2 playable characters is actually called Bin, the same B-I-N. And he actually had the name Bin Chan as credits as early as 1986 when he got special thanks on Space Harrier on the Sega Master System. He also worked as a programmer on Afterburner, Afterburner 2, and a game designer in Turbo Outrun. Okay, so do you think Satoshi named Bin after his nickname within Sega AM2? He is the main programmer. I mean, do you think that this was a possibility? Because I don't think he gets that much credit, but his name pops up a lot in these Sega AM2 games, and it's like Bin, and this character's Bin, and I think this is his first project as a lead developer, I think, because he was co-developing with Afterburner with Yu Suzuki.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm trying to remember too. Weren't there objects in Space Harrier called Bins Beans or something like that?
I think so. I'm not really 100% sure. Was it spelled BIN too?
I'm looking into it right now. It's probably the most important research I've ever done. But in the meantime,
I'll talk about the other big name on the project. The other big name on this project was Kaiji Okayasu. I can't really say his name, but he went as Oka-chan / Punk Boy, right? Who was credited for making the ranking system in this game. Later in his career, he would be asked to port Virtua Fighter on the Sega Saturn, and later became Sega Virtua Fighter Remix. While it was rushed and buggy, it actually impressed people at Sega that he was able to get that project out on time. So he was promoted to direct Virtua Fighter 2, and eventually became game director, program director, and director for Shenmue. And his last project was a director in Shenmue 3. So this guy's an OG Sega guy, especially for AM2 and Yu Suzuki. Mostly everyone in this game went by nicknames, which was typical in the 80s for Japan. For example, Dynamite Ducks, the whole design, the character design and all that, we don't even know who's the guy that did that. Like, they went by Kaio-chan, which is a Kamen Rider reference, but we don't know the real name. And then there's another designer listed as Fixed Time Man. So there's a lot of developers here that we don't know. We talked a lot about uncredited creators on older games and had episodes where we agreed they deserve recognition. Who do you think's how do you think Sega could basically pay honor to these developers that don't have a name or an actual developer name linked to their nickname? Because Dynamite Ducks is never going to have a re-release, right? Like, how would they be able to do that outside of I guess making their own Wikipedia page where they finally give everyone credit for every single game that ever released?
Yeah, it would be interesting. I mean, I don't see Sega having any interest in going back and fixing this. It would be nice, though. I mean, if Sega Forever wanted to spend a little time doing highlights of people who have kind of got lost in the woodwork just because of the way naming was done at the time, that would be pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've done our own research in the past, and it's very difficult.
It is very difficult. And that'd be an interesting, I don't know, maybe a series or something, or I'm surprised there's not more YouTube videos on the idea of these nicknamed lost people in video games, you know?
Right, and I do have an update on Binsbean.
Oh.
So they are, it's spelled Binsbein, one word, and it is those little shapes that float in the air, in Space Harrier.
Mm-hmm. In the first stage?
So, yeah, I think so. And I looked, and there's nothing else that says they're that is anything outside of a thing that exists in Space Harrier. So it must be another thing named after him,
Yeah. Or he could have taken the name from there or something. Because I think his first game is that Space Harrier Master System port. So, like I said, Yu Suzuki was listed as producer for the game. Since games take about a year in development back then, sometimes shorter, Sega AM2 was pumping out. This is what they did since 87 to 89. Afterburner, 87, which lead developer and programmer Yu Suzuki for both. They did 1 and 2 the same year. Then Power Drift, which Yu Suzuki was director and designer. Dynamite Ducks, just producer. Turbo Outrun, special thanks. Sword of Vermilion, producer. So I think it's obvious to say that Yu Suzuki was doing Power Drift, Afterburner 2, and 1. And these other games were just done by other people in this team that had nothing to do because he was doing everything.
He has openly said that, maybe I'm jumping ahead, but that Sword of Vermilion he has no connection to. Because when Shenmue was coming out, people were citing that Sword of Vermilion was really his first RPG. And they were like, so this is kind of the successor to Sword of Vermilion. And in interviews, he was like, I was a producer on it. I had no creative input. Like, that's not my game.
Well, you answered the question, because I said, how much hands-on do you think he did? And like, if he did nothing for Sword of Vermilion, I'm sure he did almost nothing for this game too.
I mean, that's possible, but Sword of Vermilion has no representation in Shenmue, and yet he went out of his way to put, like, well, I guess those are Sonic the Fighters, right? He never put the blue. Yeah, so maybe he doesn't. We should ask him. I don't know. Like, next Kickstarter, we'll get a dinner in France with him or whatever they have as a reward, and then we'll sit down, fly out there, and be like, "Do you remember Dynamite Ducks?" And he'll say, "No," and then we'll say, "Thank you," and leave.
You know what? Is being the Dynamite in Shenmue, or is it 3 or Shenmue 1 and 2?
I don't think he is in it.
Okay, because I was wondering if he was in it, because I was like, in my notes I didn't find him on it, and I'm like, I wonder if Sega Retro just didn't list it.
No,
okay,
he's not in it.
All right, I was gonna say, let's talk about some actual. Let's talk about the game actually. With the game story, which you have guessed takes a real double dragon approach to it, which seems to be a big influence on this game. The game starts with a girl named Lucy being kidnapped by an evil sorcerer named Sorcerer Achacha, and its player's mission is to rescue, and you play as two anthropomorphic red and blue ducks who are named Ben and Pin, Ben being the blue one and Pin being the red one. Very similar to the concept behind Double Dragon, where the two twin brothers are rescuing their kidnapped love interest. But just like Ben and Pin, they are blue and red. Double Dragon's protagonist Billy is blue and Jimmy is red. So Jimmy, get it? It's like Ben, Pin, Billy, and Jimmy.
Yeah.
It sort of feels like Sega. Someone at Sega AM2 saw beat 'em ups released by other companies that seem to be more mature themed, and saw an avenue aimed for kids. Or do you think they were kind of taking a joke out of these games that they're so violent, like grim?
I feel like Sega was savvy enough to think that maybe we should, like, if we're going to do another beat 'em up, let's try something different so it's not all adult, so that we can, bring the kids in and maybe give them like an entry level beat 'em up, because full well that there's going to be some parents who are like, you're not playing Streets of Rage, or not Streets of Rage, that wasn't in arcades, but you know what I mean, like,
yeah,
you're not going to play Golden Axe, that looks way too violent. They have axes. I'll play this funny cartoon game. I don't feel like AM2 was ever a developer that was like tongue-in-cheek. They seemed very like straight-laced.
Yeah, they definitely did. I have to agree with you on that one. I will say that the closest we got in America, because this game didn't come out in America, it came out in Europe and I think Japan, some places in Europe, was like the Simpsons game. That one was also kind of violent. Yeah. Exactly, yeah. So that's the closest we got. I think that one also has kind of like dodgy hit detection when you hit enemies because of the like cartoony aspect of it. I think this one has the same problem. Maybe it's just the way the characters are shaped and how big they are on screen. But
right.
Yeah, outside of that, like, do you see any other genre that is not like? I never noticed how grim and dark these beat 'em up games usually are. Like Streets of Rage, Double Dragon, Final Fight. Golden Axe, they're all like wastelands. Like none of them are like positive or different like that. It's like gangsters all the time. So I always so that's interesting. I never really saw it that way when I played those games. I just play them because they're fun to play. But
that's interesting.
Let's talk about so I was gonna say, you're the duck expert, so I want to talk a little bit about the ducks in this game. First of all, we're going to talk about Ben and Pin. The characters are designed and influenced by early mascot character cartoons, quite like Mario and Sonic were. The ducks wear a red bow ties, white gloves, and big shoes. What is your opinion on I like the ducks. I think they're well designed. I think they should use them more, which we'll talk more about Ben the Dynamite. But my only problem is the bow ties being red on both. I just think that Pin should have a blue bow tie instead of a red bow tie.
That's a good point.
Besides that, great characters. I like them. Do you think they're like... what's your opinion on these characters? I mean, They are Bean's parent. I mean,
They're-
Bean's
They're
parents.
kind of like Mickey Mouse combined with Donald Duck, because they've got the Mickey shoes, but then they got the bow tie, which is
Is it like Warner Brothers?
I guess so. I think the best aspect is the way they design the hair, where it kind of is one. It's almost like reverse Sonic. It's like if Sonic pushed his hair forward, and obviously that translates really well once you get into Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm trying to remember too what shoes Bean the Dynamite has.
I actually looked that up because I was looking at the shoes. I didn't even know what these shoes were. And Bean has more like a Sonic design.
Yeah, so early on in the Sonic games, everyone had Sonic shoes.
Yeah,
it was like who was there? There was Mighty, Ray, and Bean all wore Sonic's shoes, and then as time went on, they. Like in the comic books, they would alter the designs of them. And it's interesting because, Bean's shoes went from being Sonic shoes without socks to Sonic shoes with socks, but with like a double stripe. And then they went back to Sonic shoes without socks in the latest comic. I think that came out for the 30th anniversary. But yeah, whereas these are just kind of like maroon, cloggy Mickey Mouse shoes. So I would say the only I prefer the design of Bean the Dynamite with the handkerchief and the Sonic shoes to like big clumpy shoes and the bow tie. And I think it was a mistake to give a red bird a red bow tie because it looks like he just has like a really thick bump on his neck.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird. But I think too with the red and blue color, I have to wonder if it was a design choice because if they were going to do grassy settings, a green bird would get lost in the background.
Oh, I'm
you know
sure.
What I mean?
I'm sure.
And the dark blue at least works, so if you are on a blue sky, it's going to definitely stand out. But there must be some thought behind character design back then where they were like, we don't want to match colors to the background, so you're not going to see gray characters, green characters, or light blue characters, really. And that's what I guess Sonic kind of stands out there, but they always made the sky dark blue when Sonic was a lighter blue.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. That's all I think about.
I did put, I don't know, I did these notes late at night, but I did put that it kind of reminded me, the character Ben, of Flicky. I don't know why. Maybe they're just two birds, and I'm like, I don't know. There has to be something there, right? They're related, of course. They're cousins.
Yeah, and Sonic also sniped Flicky and made it his own.
Yeah, and they kind of did this with Dynamite Ducks, sort of. I guess AM2 kind of handed it to them when they made Sonic the Fighters, but what's your opinion on Sega AM2 trying to like copy we talked a lot already about Ben and Pin, actually. We could just move on to the next character, which is the female Lucy, who she kind of sports this bright pink hair and is wearing a blue dress, which is like, I thought it was like a ninja kind of like outfit for some reason. But then I looked at other artwork and it definitely isn't. It's just like it has like a collar on the top, but it's like a dress with a white belt and a white shirt underneath and like socks that go all the way up to her knees. They're white too, and blue shoes. So that's what she looks like. I mean, she's just the typical anime girl that all these developers were in love with in the 80s, that they all watched anime. Like she like repeats a lot in a lot of Sega games, like this type of like girl character.
Right, and it's interesting too, this was 1988, and when 1991 rolled around, they were doing Sonic, they were like, well, we have to give him a girlfriend, like a human girlfriend named Madonna. Yeah. So it's almost like this was a common trend where it was like cartoonish character and then girlfriend who's a human. I don't know where that started. I mean, in Roger Rabbit it was funny, and Roger Rabbit came out around this time, so maybe that's what they were going for. That's what the Japanese were like, oh wow, she's sexy and it seems cool with the Americans, they like it. Roger Rabbit was
I think it's
88.
I think the arcade version is implied that she's just friends with the ducks, but I think you're thinking about the Master System version. There's an actual relationship with one of the characters because like he's a human that turns into a duck in the Master System version.
Okay.
Because like we'll talk about the Master System.
It seems like the Japanese were like all about that in the late 80s and early 90s. Where,
for sure.
Like it was like teaming a cartoon character with like an animal cartoon with a human girl. Weird.
They were furries, dude. They were furries. They were the early furries at Sega. They were opening it up for everyone else. The next character we have is Sorcerer Achacha, the main villain of the game. But does he really look like a sorcerer? The man wears a golden crown with a stylized golden beetle in the middle instead of a jewel. Is overweight, has a 5 o'clock shadow, and is wearing like orange and blue clothing with a lot of ruffles like a king. I don't know. His design's weird. He just looks like a drunken dude that they saw at a bar and they're like, this guy's going to be the sorcerer. But we made him look like a king.
He looks like Dodon Pa from Team Sonic Racing.
I don't know who that is.
That's the big cat guy that like has a crown and floats, and he's like the master of ceremonies. He looks like a king.
Yeah. He kind of does. If he was a human, if like they turned him into a human. What's your opinion on this guy's character? This is the last boss fight where he's like, I guess has like a statue of stones that look like balls.
Yeah, I was gonna say he kind of looks forgettable. And speaking of balls, his like nose is like a scrotum.
Pretty much, yeah, and it goes up
testicles.
To a golden beetle. I mean, what's that symbolizing, you know?
I don't know. That's a very strange design.
Yeah, very strange. But I think the last character we're going to talk about is probably the most important character in this game. You ever heard of Colonel Sanders?
Of course. He's a character from Phantasy Star Online 2 or something, right?
Or
Universe.
He makes an appearance outside in the first level outside of a Kentucky Fried Chicken at the start of the game. And later there's a mini game where both characters box it out and he's the referee. For some reason, he's the referee. Like, they couldn't find anyone else to, like, referee a boxing match between them. And they're like, Colonel Sanders. And he showed up from the grave in this game.
That's so bizarre.
Isn't it bizarre that, like, this is part of the KFC multiverse? Like, I mean, there is, like, they have consoles, TV drama. When are they going to have Dynamite Ducks show up in the TV show?
Right. Well, I mean, that was the whole thing, though. Like, KFC, Colonel Sanders was a real person, and then they kind of just ran with him being the mascot, and then he died.
Yeah.
And they were just a fried chicken place with this old guy's face. And then around, like, the late 80s, I think they realized that the Japanese loved Colonel Sanders, so they were like, screw it, let's make him, I mean, a meme before memes were memes, basically. Like, they were like, go all out, make the most ridiculous cameos for Colonel Sanders, put him in games, because, I mean, Ronald McDonald had video games by this time, so they were probably just like, screw it.
It's a little extra morbid when it's like an actual person. You know what I mean?
That's what's so weird. This is a real person.
Yeah.
Like, who was well dead by this point, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, here I go
looking up how... I think he died like a long time ago, dude. Like
he died in 1980, so 8 years before. He lived for a long time. He was an old man. But you look at him, he obviously was a real person. It's just bizarre. Dude. And then they started doing commercials where it was like different comedians playing him, and then they did like that soap opera, an actual soap opera movie. It was just bizarre.
But imagine
and
this.
Crazy Taxi, too.
He died, and like 4 years later, they had him in a Japanese video game promoting chicken still. Like, imagine being like your grandfather, and you're like, oh, cool, Grandpa's in the new Dynamite Ducks game. It's like, okay.
Yeah. And it's weird, too, because if they were chickens, it would make more sense, but they're ducks. And KFC doesn't sell ducks, or are they ducks? I guess we'll figure that out.
He's also like him and the Sorcerer and Lucy are like, I guess they're saying that these characters live with these people, but it's like, I don't know, do you really want to see the guy that kills all these chickens being the referee of a boxing, like duck fight? Not
Right.
Yeah, it's a little weird, a little morbid, but let's talk about the music. The music's actually really good for this game, even though it's really short. It's done by Sega AM2 Legend Hero. Back then, all these soundtracks for the arcades were really short. Like, Outrun has like 3 tracks, right? So this soundtrack clocks in at 17 minutes. The game probably takes you like 30 minutes to beat, so that's a pretty lengthy soundtrack for an arcade. But I would say that it's more of an EP than like an actual album. If you're a band and you release 17 minutes, you're calling it an EP. You're not calling it a full release.
Right, and that's why data discs in their albums were like doubling up Sega arcade titles, because there's not enough for a 2-sided record. It's just kind of funny.
And the music is very up-tempo, something that you would find from a typical mascot platformer game at the time, but it's done really well. We're going to listen a little bit of this track that we got called Japan, and like, one thing I will say about the game, it jumps all over the place. It's like randomly you're in Japan, you're in a cave, you're in Chicago, then you're like in Texas. It's like there's no right like rhythm or anything for what they do. But let me. Can you hear it?
No, I can listen on my end though.
Yeah. So it's like very jazzy, good. I mean, I don't. Does this remind you of Japan?
Yeah.
Exactly. No. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't really. It's just a good track. I wonder if he just wrote the tracks and didn't even know what was happening at the time. Like, he was just like, "Oh, we have a new mascot platformer. Let me see the character." All right, and he just writes 6 tracks. Here you go. And then they just like mix and match them, because that doesn't sound Japanese at all. But it sounds good, so I'll give him that. And you don't. There's never going to be a physical release of this album, I'm assuming, in any present time. I think if Cartridge Thunder or like Data Disc do have the balls, it would be pretty sick to have this and the like Master System and all the whatever unused songs that Hero might have lying around, or remixes in a like actual album just for this with artwork and stuff. I think it would be cool, because this game hasn't really gotten love, and having a soundtrack for it would be pretty cool. Especially since it's, a legendary composer.
Right.
You want to talk about, you have anything to say about the soundtrack, or you want me to move on to the ports of the game?
Move along.
Oh my god. Wow, the attitude. Oh, did you guys, what am I going
to say? It's 17 minutes of music that doesn't really match any of the stages.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Port-wise, the game was actually quite a bit of ports. There was one on the CPC, the Commodore 64, and the ZX Spectrum, but those weren't
the ZX Spectrum.
Is that how you say it? X? Say it again.
No, but they say Z as Z over there in
my bad.
The jolly old UK. Yeah.
My bad. Okay, I didn't know that. But so the only port that was actually handled by Sega was the Master System version, and that sadly only came out in pallet territories and in Brazil. This was a huge demake, since they had to actually make a 16-bit arcade game all the way down to a 8-bit console game, which is like a huge downgrade. Like, from 16-bit arcade to 16-bit consoles was already a downgrade. So like 8-bit, way more. They also changed the plot, like we talked about before, where Ben is actually a human that turns into a duck, and Lucy's his girlfriend, and he has to rescue her. And I already said you already don't like the whole girlfriend animal thing, but that was basically the question here. Yeah, I don't like it either. So while I said we're just going to talk about what's your opinion on the Master System version of this game? You did play this one, right?
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, I don't think it's going to make any like top 10 lists or anything, but there aren't really any cutesy beat 'em ups on the Master System outside of this, so it's there if you want to check it out. But yeah, Master System library in general is just kind of strange, because it's like a mix of original IPs that never went anywhere, demakes, or like massive IPs that got their start there. So it's like you're between Phantasy Star, Dynamite Ducks, and then like Zillion, You know, it's just it's such a strange mix.
I have to agree with you. The Master System version is just whatever. I think I didn't mention it, but there's one stage missing on it, the Jungle stage, which again it's an 8-bit demake, and with these demakes there was always them not releasing every single level. They would take some out, especially like what's that one? Rice Star. That one did the same thing too. The fact that it's just one level is actually kind of pretty good. So now let's talk about that sexy, dirty, naughty Easter egg that was hidden within Dynamite Ducks. There was a video done by Larry Bundy Jr. You probably seen him on Twitter, Barry.
He was the last Channel Awesome guy because they forgot to remove him from the site and he never quit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, everyone was jumping ship and he just like forgot that they even were cross-posting his videos until a year later. And then he was like, oh, okay.
He's pretty popular. I mean, this video has millions of views. Yeah. I was going to say, so the ending was for the Amiga and the Atari ST versions, which weren't handled by Sega, but it's kind of smutty. Do you have that link to the text right there? Because it's if you try to read it off the screen, it's impossible, basically.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to read if you want to read it real quick while I play the video for the people at home. The infamous cutscene.
Like the HT. Oh!
You see
Larry
it right
Bundy.
do
you want me to read the HTTP for people?
No, under it. Like there's a
Larry Bundy
right there. There's a link. I'll do it. So
okay.
The ending of the game is basically kind of like the ending of the actual game, but there's nudity. And a different ending, like story, which is smutty, right? So the game. Let me put the video up. I'll play it and I'll narrate it for everyone. It basically says.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
One day, Lucy was playing with herself while Ben and Pin were buggering each other in the beautiful flower garden. When suddenly, an evil black pimp appeared and changed into some kinky leather gear while they were watching. Lucy startled and orgasmed at the size of the miracle balls and disappeared with the pimp to his sleazy brothel. Therefore, Ben and Pin stopped giving each other one and ventured into the brothel, not wanting to miss out. So that's the story in the dirty version of the game. This was hidden within the game. And obviously, this was partly developers just basically having to laugh with each other and then hiding it within the game. Have you ever hidden any dirty jokes in your artwork, Barry?
No, not on this level.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like insane that it was in there, and not only that they actually went in the sprite and animated it and made the lettering. Like the lettering was custom in the video, so it's like you guys like spend time to making this smutty story version of it. You think they were like trying to make a bootleg version of it to sell, like a dirty version?
I have no idea. They must have just had extra time on their hands and thought it was funny, but it's just so bizarre that they did it.
I have to 100% agree. It's one of the weirdest things I've seen online, to be honest with you. But now we get to talk about something you love. Sonic the Fighters, right? You're a Sonic expert on the site.
Oh, boy. Oh, I guess so, yeah. I'm the only one left, so I have to be the expert.
It's very, I don't think there's that many Sonic fans anymore. Like, I went online and I put Sonic fans. None of them popped up. It was just a picture of you and, one other dude that hasn't been online for, 3 years. So that makes you the last one.
All right.
The Dynamite Duck duo was almost forgotten until 1996 when Sega AM2 debuted Sonic the Fighters, which featured a new green fighter named Being the Dynamite, a bomb expert considering his name. Also, an interesting note, Being the Dynamite breaks the Sonic the Hedgehog tradition by ending the name after he's supposed to be the animal, right? So it's Sonic the Hedgehog.
Right.
And he's just Being the Dynamite, not Being the Woodpecker, which we'll get into. But if you see him, you'd say he was a duck, right? Just like Ben and Pin in Dynamite Ducks. But according to the Fighters Mega Mix official guide, Bean is actually... not only is Ben, the blue one, his father, the blue duck, but his son is actually a woodpecker. And no, Sega never explained why a bird had a woodpecker son. I'm assuming the mom's a woodpecker, I guess. I don't know how that works in Sonic Universe.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So there's a few other characters that break this tradition of the name. I think Fang, the sniper, is another one that breaks the tradition of the animal name. I guess if you do the other one, what's his other name? Is Fang the sniper?
Knack the Weasel.
I think Knack the Weasel. Yeah, so it's half and half, right?
Yeah, and then there is another case of a animal in the Sonic universe being questionable as to which animal they are, and that's Princess Sally, who is like a chipmunk and a squirrel. Like, it's unknown which one, so I think it's like maybe her dad was a chipmunk and her mom was a squirrel. I don't know. But it's weird. Do you mind them breaking the tradition of the typical Sonic name by doing something like Bean the Dynamite? And do you think like something like Bean the Woodpecker or Bean the Ducks have the same ring to it? I always found Fang the Sniper and Bean the Dynamite to be kind of like, I don't want to, I guess I'll use the term English,
Yeah.
It's like, it sounds like something was lost in translation. It just sounds like maybe in Japanese that sounded a lot better than Bean the Dynamite in English, which is why, Knack the Weasel was changed from Fang the Sniper. Honestly, I would have called it Fang the Wolf, and then Bean the Woodpecker, I think would have been fine. But yeah, because like I like the name Bean and I like the name Fang, but yeah, it is kind of strange to call them a dynamite. Like, what is the dynamite?
Yeah, I didn't even really think about it like that until I was doing the notes, and they said that that's kind of a tradition with Sonic characters, and I'm like, hey, you're right, actually, and there's only a few that kind of break it, so interesting. And it's
Ian Flynn gets really weird. Like, if you've been reading the recent IDW stuff, it'll be like there will be one that's like, oh, it's like a weird like fish you've never heard of, and I looked it up. I'm like, oh, this thing's real. Like, echidna. We didn't really know what echidnas were over here in America until we saw Knuckles.
So he's doing that.
Ian Flynn's like going like another level up and being like, here's a deep sea creature you've never heard of, and now it's a main character in the Sonic comics. Like, I mean, if it works, I don't know. Like, I want a dog. Like, there's no dog, is there?
I'm trying to think.
There's cats.
I think we might have maybe seen like a background character in Sonic Forces, but
like puppies or something. Yeah, but they've never had like
an actual character with like characterization. You mean like like Bean the Dynamite's a character? Like, he's not just the
right? Because Buddy was a wolf, I think. Buddy the wolf. So
the crazy thing though, like that. Bean's involvement in Sonic the Fighters actually kept the Dynamite Ducks legacy alive, at least. Like, if it wasn't for Bean the Dynamite, we probably would never have a character that even looks like Bean, or him being part of the Sega universe or Sonic universe. So let's look at some of his cameos in some of the games. First, we have in Sonic Generations, Bean was one of the wanted posters in City Escape. Then we had him in Sonic Mania, when Bean and Bark and Fang make an appearance on Mirage Saloon as illusions in the boss fight with Heavy Magician. And in the same stage, they also have the same wanted posters again. In Fighters Mega Mix, he's unlockable. And once you unlock him, if you double tap down and then you press punch, kick, guard on the select screen, you double tap down and then you press punch, kick, guard, you get a blue one, which is supposed to be Ben from Dynamite Ducks. And he looks beautiful. He looks blue and he's got the little bow tie. He's ready to kick some butt. I actually like that they added this as an alternative costume. I wish they would have done a red one. I think they have a black and white one, right? I think everyone does, don't they? Like a black and white color version?
I think you could be right, yeah.
And he was also in Virtual Strikers 2, which is like the weirdest look. Like, he's so huge compared to everyone that's playing the game. Like he's like 10 feet tall. Everyone else is like 5'11", right? And in Virtual Strikers 2, Bean appears as a MVP on the MVP Yuki-chan team, which is a secret team you unlock. I never played Virtual Striker 2. I'm not a big soccer fan, but I like the fact that they added him in the soccer game. Why not? Why not? I guess I don't have the image of the other one. It skipped. But basically, Bean joined Archie, Sonic the Hedgehog from issue 160, along with Bark. The Archie characterization has him as a goofy and eccentric with mood swings and extreme reactions that makes him dangerous. He likes shiny objects and explosions, which makes sense with his character. He was part of some big storylines in Archie, which will probably be covered in a future Archie episode, maybe. Like, if we ever do one on minor characters that show up during the run. But in IDW, he came back as a wacky mercenary from another dimension set in the recent past. Did you read him in IDW?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have.
And is it that much different? Because from what I've seen, he also works with Chaotix team people. I mean, not Chaotix, but Fang and...
Yeah, he's not that different, and I think it's because Ian Flynn kind of created his Archie persona, and so he just kind of carried that over to the IDW books. And the whole shiny thing, it's goofy, but whatever, you know.
So... apparently the Archie comic, I don't know about this. It was in the Wikipedia page, and I tried to find a scan of the comic that did the whatever that were. Well, basically, Archie hinted that Bean's parent were from Tails Adventures Island, that island with all the birds. I forgot what the island was called, but Tails Adventure was a 1995 Game Gear game. Remember when the island full of birds? So the idea is that he's from that island, and he ties into Tails' Adventure, which would be cool for fans, you know? I mean, Ian Flynn's, like, pretty smart with that.
Right. Yeah, that would be, I think, in the Sonic Universe comics, which were, like, starring all the characters but Sonic, so you'd get, like, a Tails arc. And, yeah, I definitely remember reading that one. Okay, so... that's cool.
Was it hinted at, like, super hinted at, or was it just, like, told to you, like, he's from that island?
I can't recall, but I do remember it being there being some sort of mention or reference in there. But yeah, Ian Flynn, he definitely he knows what's up.
So I'm not a super professional, but what's Sega's stance on Archie Comics continuation like that? Like, or Ian Flynn, like he does all these like little cool things where he ties these little things in and gives you little like he's kind of just tying in loose ends for Sonic Team, and then like Sonic Team forgets.
In terms of, like, canon, so we have the Sonic games, obviously, and the canon's kind of rebooted and reset and been rejiggered again and again. But where we are right now with Sonic Forces referencing, you know, everything all the way back to, heck, I guess Sonic Mania and the classic series, that's all one canon, obviously, like game canon. And then they released, between the cancellation of Archie and... the announcement of IDW, there was these digital comics. Do you remember those?
Yeah. To promote Forces, right?
Prequels. Yeah, they were prequels to Sonic Forces. Those are game canon as well, even though they're comics from former Archie staff members, because the story came from Sega and Sonic Team. So that is canon to the IDW canon now, which treats all the games as canon. However, the games are not tied to the comics. So whatever changes in the games, the comics either need to adapt or they're going to have to split apart. And I don't think they want to do that. Now, they do have that book coming out, the Sonic Encyclopedia, which is coming out, I think, next month. And I'm really excited to see that just because I think it might... be a big deal for like Sonic canon, because it is probably going to have Ian Flynn coming in and doing what he does to the comics, but like to the games. So he'll probably make these connections and like create a new canon timeline. And I know it was a big deal when Zelda did that. Remember the Zelda history book that came out, and people were like, "Oh my God, it has the timeline for the games."
Oh yeah.
Oh, there are alternate timelines. Yeah. And then I just wanted to throw this in there because I was tip tapping around while you were talking earlier. Totally paying attention to you.
Of course.
But when that comic came out, that digital comic, they would send, for Sonic Forces, they would send like press kits to us, or press files, and they included the PDF files, so you could, or the Photoshop files, so you could open them and you could actually see the layers and like the discarded art and like the titles. And what I thought was really interesting was that during the development of Forces, the Avatar had a working name as Buddy, and they changed it to Avatar. And then when we were seeing that wolf character, that kind of became the default avatar for all the advertising. We had glasses.
Yeah.
We were the first ones to call him Buddy. And the reason for that is I believe someone told me before Forces was revealed, either like the week before that trailer, that there was going to be a Buddy character. And I think that was kind of the rumor for a while. And so as soon as that trailer came up, I started calling him Buddy the Wolf on Twitter. And while we were talking here, I did like a Twitter advanced search. So we were definitely the first people to refer to that character as Buddy the Wolf. And what's interesting is that in those layer files, they refer to that character as Buddy. So I don't know if we, or I should say me specifically, like inadvertently named a Sonic character, but I think that's kind of cool.
That is pretty cool. But
and then with David from Sonic Retro, we named the island from Sonic 4, and since Sega will never revisit it, it's
canon.
As good as canon.
I will say, what is your opinion on like Sega kind of like teasing these like characters as missing with missing posters and stuff, with like Bean and Fang? And like, and fans asking for them back. And I know that like Sonic Team has been so like anti-friends in the games, right? Like they just stick with the core and Sonic as the gameplay, the main character. So like, do you think there's ever going to be a time that they're going to revisit it and they're doing these wanted posters as a sign that they still remember them, or just for fans to be like, shut up, we put them in the poster?
I think something Sonic Team and Sega in general has been really terrible at doing with the Sonic franchise is when you have like a Team Sonic Racing, they did not give us like the ultimate roster. Like the mere fact that Sonic Free Riders for the Kinect has a larger roster of Sonic characters than Team Sonic Racing, like a multi-platform racing game. And you see like Nintendo all the time doing Mario Kart and Super Smash Brothers, and the whole thing is we will cram as many characters as possible into this. And then Sega's like, yeah, we're not going to put half the Chaotix, we're not going to put Bark and Bean, we're not going to put the Free Riders or the Riders, Babylon Rogues. And it's very stupid, to be quite honest, of Sega, because we've seen in the community, like, we know people who are like, oh, I'm not really big into Sonic, but I love the birds in Riders. And you're like, really? Yeah, like, I'm like, really? You, like, those are, like, peak characters for you? But, I mean, they exist. So I don't know why, just in how they put Sonic and Monkey Ball to sell units, I don't know why they don't put every single
character,
Sonic character possible. Like the mere fact that Fang the Sniper is insanely popular in the comics. Like people love when he shows up. He's like the Boba Fett of Sonic.
Pretty much.
And he's not in any of the games. And then Takashi Iizuka will go like on record as saying, no, he exists in the classic universe. We will never bring him into the modern. I'm like, so you just basically built a wall for no reason, where you're saying we will never give modern redesigns of Mighty, Ray, Fang, Bean, and Bark. Like, why? No reason except, like, he makes these stupid rules in his head. I don't get it. Like, someone at Sega needs to, like, take over Sonic Team, like, with an Ian Flynn sort of mindset and be like, look, you have all these beloved characters. Start sticking them in games because they're blowing up in the comics.
Oh, yeah.
And you saw as soon as they made little cameos, as soon as we saw Bean again, in just like, it wasn't even him. It was like a mirage of him. And then when he appeared again in that 30th anniversary comic, like people were so excited. And then Sega's like, we're very excited to show you Sonic Rangers. It's going to have a blue...
Avatar.
blue trail that you leave behind Sonic. And it's like, if you just threw like a mention of Fang returning to the games, people would be losing it.
It's like,
I don't know why.
They're afraid to tell. I don't know. It's weird. It's like kind of like Sonic Forces, where they like teased all those villains, and then they were just holographed.
Right.
It's like they hate,
and they didn't even use them all as bosses. Like Chaos was just in cutscenes, and then on top of that, they didn't throw like if they. Okay, so if it was like, remember that trailer where it was like Metal Sonic, Zavik, and you were like, oh, okay, Chaos. You're like, oh, what if the last one was Fang? Like a totally redesigned modern Fang. People would be losing their shit. They'd be like, oh my god. And instead they're like, no, it's Infinite. He's a wolf you've never heard of.
Emo.
Or a coyote or whatever, and you'll never see him again.
Well, it's going to be, yeah, you're right. We're never going to see him again.
Like pander, that's so weird. Like Sonic Team does not... Like, they don't pander to fans.
No.
And it's weird because people accuse them of pandering. They really don't. They, like, use Green Hill a lot.
Yeah,
but
that's about
not fan service.
Yeah, well, they think that because of Generations, and I'm like, dude, Generations was one and forever thing they done that was pandering. It's like...
Or not, I don't even want to say pandering, because pandering's a bad thing. Like, fan service. Sonic Team's afraid to do fan service. I don't understand why. Like, Azuka has rules. It doesn't make sense.
And his rules are lame, so I don't know. Hopefully...
They are.
You know what? They took off Nagoshi from RGG, which he's actually a good leader. I mean, maybe Izuka's next. Maybe they'll renegotiate his contract and they'll let some younger Ian Flynn type guy take over that is actually cares more about fan service. Because, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Sonic Mania literally, like, sold on fan service and old fans, So the last cameo we're going to get to is the Sega Ages Columns 2 cameo. I don't know if you played Sega Ages Columns 2, but once you unlock levels, you'll have banner girls from Sega history like put up the little sign. And if you unlock stages 16 through 20, you get to unlock Lucy, the female girl you rescue. And right here you can see a more detailed look at her costume right here. Like I told you, the knee-high, the socks, and the way that the dress looks. So she's not dressed, provocatively or sexy or anything. She's just dressed like a normal girl. And the ducks are here too, Ben and Pin. I like the art. I thought this was pretty cool in Columns 2, even though it's like these characters in the background that are holding the sign have nothing to do with the columns at all. They just added them to this release just because for fan service. So that's cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And
I love it.
That's all my notes for Dynamite Ducks. So you want to read? You have anything to say about the game and to close it up, and then we'll get right into Patreon.
No, I mean I did a bunch of ranting just to kind of stretch the episode out a little, to be quite honest. But yeah, I mean it's a fun game. It's an interesting game. It's a game worth talking about. I mean, we filled an hour talking about it, so there's something to be said.
Oh yeah.
But I just think it's so fun to look back at Sega past and see these little games that would have gotten lost, and then just through references and like the connective tissue of AM2 and Sonic Team, they become relevant again. So we'll talk about Flicky someday on this show for sure, and we'll be like talking probably for an hour just because of all the crazy connections that the Flicky Bird has in the Sonic franchise. I mean, the mere fact that Flicky is like a stupid little puzzle game or a stupid little, it's not stupid, but come on, in the grand scheme of things. And then fast forward to 1999 and like kids and teenagers are like crying in their bedroom because a robot died and then a birdie was going home to its family and it's Flicky. Like, that's the power of Sonic and Sega and all that sort of stuff. So it's fun. But yeah, if you support us on Patreon at any tier, any level, you get to have your memories read at the end, and you could write a lot, and we'll read it all. I mean, I'll do it. So here we have Daniel Andres, who says the only real memory I have of this game is actually someone else's memory. What? Is this like the Matrix? He's like upload memory of other person. The Happy Console Gamer's super funny Dynamite Ducks video. always comes to mind whenever I hear about this game. Not sure if I should still check out the game sometime or what, but I at least know of the character named Bean, and when I first saw him in Sonic the Fighters.
Yeah, Happy Console Gamer is a big Dynamite Ducks fan. His artwork on his YouTube channel has Dynamite has been on it, so that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Cool. And then we already read Alex's memory, and then here we have Nicholas Schaefer, who says, I can't wait for this one. I did not know about this game. I always thought Bean was from Tails Adventure. Ooh.
Which is sort of true, right?
Yeah, tying back to the... yeah. So that about does it, except for the reveal of what we are covering next time in 2 weeks on the episode that will drop just days before Halloween when the public release hits. So, George, I think we're going back to the House of the Dead.
Oh my god. I thought you were going to do like
3.
that fear game for the Saturn. What's it called? 3?
Oh, yeah, House of the Dead 3. We've done 1 and 2. Look at this. We're moving right along.
I love it. All right.
Yeah.
Peace.
So, lock and load.
See you guys on the next episode when we talk about scary horror stuff. Bye.
Bye.